just make sure all the staff are in here? I know there's some people are missing. They need to get in here straight away. Straight away. That'd be great. So I'm sending you a lesson. I'm taking this time to just avoid good news and stuff because we've got to get into some family issues because there's so much love in the air that we need to talk about dating, okay? Because we don't want Kevin the legend to suddenly, get unlegendary or anything, or Diogo and Sarah or anything like that. So today we're actually I'm going to do a short talk on dating spiritually. And then I'm going to have the shepherds come up and respond, add what I've missed, put in their personal experience and everything like that. So this is a lesson from the follow-up classes, but I've also emailed this to you. And so we're going to talk about dating spiritually. So Titus chapter 2, verse 11. It says, "For the grace of God that brings salvation has appeared to all men. It teaches us to say no to ungodliness and worldly passions, and to live self-controlled, upright, and godly lives in this present age, while we wait for the blessed hope and glorious appearing of our great God and Savior, Jesus Christ, who gave himself for us to redeem us from all wickedness and to purify for himself a people that are his very own, eager to do what is good." So there are two ways to conduct a dating relationship: in a worldly and ungodly manner, and then in a spiritual manner. Hence, let's talk about spiritual dating. Come on. So what are the characteristics of a worldly dating relationship? Well, the first one obviously is selfishness. It's all about you. You're focusing on what you can get out of the relationship. So remember, we talk about fish love. People say, I love fish, but what they're really doing is they want to use the fish and eat the fish. Yeah. All right? So that's the worldly relationship. And you don't do it for God or for others. So the question doesn't come in your head, who would God want me to date or marry? It starts with, who do I want to date and marry? There's a lack of control, self-control, giving in to emotion. Well, I just feel, therefore I must express, do, say, as opposed to being in control of your emotions. You give in to your desires and passions. So you like that bubbling sort of, well, I want to touch, I want to go where I shouldn't be going. There's a lack of purity. There are no boundaries, emotionally or spiritually or physically. They're not prearranged, predetermined, and so you don't know where the boundary is because you have no boundaries. Most of us have been trained by the world when it comes to dating. Whether you believe that or not, your lives demonstrate that. We've been influenced heavily by TV, friends, magazines, show, whatever it is, YouTube, podcasts, whatever it is. And just because you see it on social media in another person in another church does not make it right. Okay, because there are a lot of bold people inside the church who put things up there. You go, oh, they did it. That doesn't mean it hasn't been disciplined afterwards, but you don't see the discipline. Okay. False churches and their teachings. All right, so literally there are no rules in many churches. While dating is a modern concept, in some ways, actually when you think of Joseph and Mary, Jesus' mother and stepfather, they were engaged to be married, to be divorced. But they weren't actually sleeping together. So in Jewish society, from what I understand, somebody would be engaged to be married, which they'd be betrothed. So everybody in the village or whatever would know that those two can get time together because everybody's agreed that that couple, it's like they're married. They're not actually living together, but for a year they would build a relationship, all right, just with that one person. So if somebody saw them at the water well, they go, well, that's okay because they've already committed without physically committing. Hence why Joseph was like, how did you get pregnant, Mary? You haven't slept with anybody. She was still a virgin, although they would have to go through this technical divorce he thought about because they were betrothed to each other. So if ever there was to be a sort of comparison to what we're trying to get to, that would be the only one I could really think of. But ultimately, spiritual common sense is what we're appealing to. All right? The standard of the relationship in the Bible were pretty much arranged marriages for the most part. There are biblical principles we can look at to try and apply to the modern world and how we do this in the church. Point 1, selflessness and spirituality. That must be at the heart of it. You know, it's easy for a person to forget that in your dating relationship, you are to seek God's kingdom and his righteousness first. So I tell all my staff, you must date according to your ambition. All right, so if you want to be in the ministry and want to lead 1,000 people, you should be looking for a spouse that can do the same. Okay, because otherwise it will cause conflict in there. Yeah. I think that's true of anything. If you want to be an eternal missionary like Eric Venezuela, you need somebody who wants to pack up their bags and go at a moment's notice. So otherwise it brings conflict that you just don't need in the relationship. Okay, somehow people think that it is their relationship. When God says give up everything, it means up everything. Well, I just thought it was physical. I thought it was my car and my wallet. No, it means everything. All right. So some people say, well, I'll surrender to God in this area, but not in my love life. I would say your love life is the area you need to submit the most. Because outside of your relationship with God, it is the one that affects you for the rest of your life. Okay? So both Kerry and I finished certain relationships because they weren't spiritual. And then we met each other and went, hey, I think this one will go the distance. And guess what? It has. Amen. Okay. All right. So I'm so glad I didn't continue in those other relationships. You know, we are called to be God's ambassadors in all areas of our life. So if you think about an ambassador, okay, is somebody that represents his country. So we are meant to be ambassadors for God. So this means we're called to be ambassadors in all areas of our lives, including our dating relationships. Imagine you're an ambassador for Australia and you're hosting, an international dinner. And then your wife is drunk, or your wife is rude, or your wife is... You can put an enormous amount of effort into that event and it can go sideways because your wife is inappropriate in that meeting. Okay? So in the same way, your spouse needs to be appropriate when it comes to displaying God. I think about Prince William and his wife, Catherine. You look at him and you look at her and you go, what a woman. She understands the role, and that must be a hard role to take on, to be the queen. But the way she dresses, the way she appears, everything, it's like she understands the role and has embraced it, as opposed to other members who have married into the royal family. You can go, they go, well, it's unfair, there's too many restrictions. That's the role. Okay? Before we get dating, and when we are dating, I think you have to understand that even if you're not dating, before you're dating, you need to be a representative with a brother or a sister. When I first became a Christian, one of my old female friends, she was my drinking partner, I worked out in Paris, we weren't girlfriend, boyfriend, said she wanted to get together when I moved back to London. And I said, look, I'm going to get with this girl, and one of the brothers said, why don't you take a sister along? And it would have been like a Saturday lunch or something, it wasn't a date. We said, it's not, great you go off with this non-Christian girl and you used to drink with her and it's not appropriate. So we went to lunch, me and this girl called Patricia Henry, and Kathy brought her friend Ruth. And I was on this sort of lunch, nothing weird, just lunch, and I said, this is my friend from church and everything like that. And this sister impressed them so much, they both came to church the next day and became Christians. Wow. So that's being godly, sort of predating and how it should be. Come on. Okay? After all, you're dating God's son and God's daughter. And all fathers look out for their children's dating relationships with ruthless spiritual scrutiny. Ruthless. Okay. 2 Corinthians 5:16. So from now on we regard no one from a worldly point of view. No one. Though we once regarded Christ in this way, we do so no longer. Therefore, if anyone is in Christ, he is a new creation. The old has gone, the new has come. All this is from God, who reconciled us to himself through Christ and gave us the ministry of reconciliation. That God was reconciling the world to himself in Christ, not counting men's sins against him. And he has committed us to the message of reconciliation. We are therefore Christ's ambassadors, as though God were making his appeal through us. We implore you on Christ's behalf, be reconciled to God. God made him who had no sin to be sin for us, so that in him we might become righteousness of God. So everything about how we treat the opposite sex, before we're dating, while we're dating, marriage, needs to be for the glory of God and to show everybody, hey, this is what we're all about. So let's talk about seeking a pattern for the future. 1 Timothy 4:12. Don't look down on you because you are young, but set an example for believers in speech, in life, in love, in faith, in purity. The pattern you set in your dating and relationship is the foundation of your future relationship in marriage, which may include the rest of your life together if you're dating. So be careful how you build. So your example must be excellent in speech. It is not your role to disciple girlfriend or boyfriend. You are only to encourage them and lift them up. You are to be their biggest fan, only say things that build each other up. Right. I think some people go, well, we're dating now, so, I'm going to disciple her. A husband disciples his wife, not a boyfriend. You don't see Joseph going, by the way, Mary. You don't, even though they were betrothed. So you've got to understand that's not your role is to be each other's biggest fan. Your life, let's talk about the dating couples. Go on dates. Make them special. All other times make completely spiritual. Evangelism, studying the Bible with people. Be the best Christian you can be. A sister is looking for someone who will lead them to heaven, and the brother for someone who can help them get there. Okay? Go on dates, everybody. Some of you just don't go on dates. They were the highlights of the week for me outside of church. I just thought it was amazing. I was like, this is fantastic. I get to meet people. We get to eat food. We had a great date with Diogo and Sarah. We just sat and chilled. We were meant to play games, but we just sat and talked and chilled. Kerry put a lot of effort into the food. I made my famous meatballs. Diogo made this, what we would call a creme caramel, an egg tart. And we had fun. It was just eating and talking and eating and talking. It was like, he's like, this reminds me of home. Just hanging out. This should be like the highlight. We work so hard, get on dates. Well, nobody asked me. Well, ask them. Maybe they don't know you exist. Come on. So you have to put yourself out there and say, well, I want to be asked by this person. If you get a reputation for taking people on great dates, believe me, that somebody will ask you. All right, so don't wait like the maiden in the tower going, Prince Charming needs to rescue me. If you're in a tower, nobody knows you exist. Okay? Okay, love. You are to focus on making them feel loved, not you feeling loved. All right, so 1 Corinthians 13:4. Love is patient, love is kind, it does not envy, it does not boast, it's not proud, it does not dishonor others, it's not self-seeking, it's not easily angered, it keeps no record of wrongs. Love does not delight in evil, but rejoices with the truth. It always protects, always trusts, always hopes, always perseveres. Love never fails. Let me ask you, how can you be upset after a date if your focus was to make them feel loved? You will only ever come away feeling hurt if your focus was on you feeling loved. Right? So you go, well, that date, it wasn't my expectation. Well, your expectation was wrong. If your expectation was you went out with a brother and he came late and he forgot his shoe and didn't get any money and you go, well, okay, so I bought him some new shoes and I paid for the date. And what I've really learned in this is I need to communicate expectations beforehand. But I need to take great joy that in the eyes of God, I was the encourager. I loved that brother or sister. Come on. Faith. Does your dating relationship inspire others to date inside the kingdom? Like Kevin and legendary girlfriend. Okay. Will your relationship build others' faith in God and Christianity? Or will it make them disillusioned by the way you speak or act? So I remember being, one of the companies I worked for was Hallis, and we had a Christmas party. And basically my company was female 99%. And so we were having the Christmas lunch. It must have been something, Kerry, I don't know if she was there or not. But they're asking, so how did you get dating and how did he ask you to be married, your partner? And goes, well, we were dancing on the dance floor and he went, you want to get married? Okay, and somebody said, well, actually I asked him, should we get married? And all these really uninspirational ways. And they're like, okay, how I asked my wife. Okay, first of all, there was a ruse, there was a lie. I got her to St. Paul's Cathedral under doing a church errand, and basically that's where Princess Di and Charles got married, and they were still in everybody's good books by then. I'd made this scroll, painted it as if it was 500 years old, put it in my umbrella, got permission to ask her to be my wife on the actual place where Di and Princess Diana and Charles got married. I got special permission there, got down there and said, will you, and I've still got the scroll, and then I whisked her away in a taxi to the Ritz for high tea, and I couldn't get that because you need to book it months in advance, but I persuaded the waiter if I got St. Paul's I could have the Ritz. And then afterwards we came out and all her friends were waiting by another cafe with all these wedding magazines. We got in another taxi, and then we went to see Sunset Boulevard, and then we did that show, and then we got another taxi home, and there were girls waiting for her and flowers and chocolate, and then there were about 3 more people to share, and they just shut up. How we do things shows our godliness. And then on top of that, the first kiss I ever gave Kerry was the day I was married. Aww. Our life preaches well. Focus on being the best potential boyfriend and girlfriend you can be, not the other way around. See, everybody's like, looking for the perfect person. You must focus on being the perfect person. I appreciate Pete and Paulina. Pete finished with his girlfriend here because she made him unspiritual. She was demanding, needy, and he said, I wake up worried about whether she is happy rather than wake up thinking about pleasing God. This is not helpful. Wow. So he said, this relationship has broken. She did fall away, and then Paulina, and it was very hard for Pete, and then Paulina swept in, and the rest is history. But that was about having a pure heart. That wasn't purity, sexual purity. That was about having a pure heart before God. Yeah. This is not helping my heart be pure. Big examples in schedule and self-control. Well, I feel like if we don't get time, we won't emotionally connect and da-da-da-da. She's looking for righteousness, not connection. Wow. Connection at that level happens after you get married. Okay, well, if I don't feel connected, maybe she won't like me. You can make somebody of the opposite sex like you. Doesn't mean they're right for you. All right? Your success in your relationship breeds more success. So we always used to try and take the dates and finish a little bit early, so there was always that feeling like we could have taken an extra half an hour, but we didn't, and that makes me want to really get on my next date next week really quickly. Do you know what I mean? Like, there was that leaving for more. I think about failures that I've seen in the kingdom. Most couples that actually fall into impurity before they get married end up divorced, even in the kingdom. And I'm not going to spit out names. People get sneaky dates. Well, we just did this together. There's no advice. I remember breaking down. We used to be in the London church, and then after that, we used to go and lead another church, it'd be like in Wollongong. So we led 2 churches. And Kerry and my car broke down on the way back of working all Sunday, and Kerry was with me. It's about 11 o'clock, and like most interns, the car, traveled on prayer, not on petrol. Anyway, broke down, and I'm stuck in the middle of nowhere, and I'm sure I didn't have road assistance because I couldn't afford that. And I was like, so I phoned up my disciple, I'm stuck in the car, just me and her, what do I do? This is not a good situation. He said, there's a hotel nearby. Well, just go there and have a drink. And I thought, okay, so I'm being righteous. This is no problem. We're spending time together, but I'm not trying to be sneaky or anything. I have a clear conscience. And as a result, we're having a great time and weren't picked up most probably till 1 o'clock in the morning, but we were righteous. And it preaches well. Does that make sense? So your life needs to preach well. Come on. Point 2, self-control. Self-control by definition means you are responsible for controlling yourself. 2 Timothy 3:1. Mark this, there will be terrible times in the last days. People will be lovers of themselves, lovers of money, boastful, proud, abusive, disobedient to their parents, ungrateful, unholy, without love, unforgiving, slanderous, without self-control, brutal, not lovers of good, treacherous, rash, conceited, lovers of pleasure rather than lovers of God, having a form of godliness but denying its power, have nothing to do with them. A sign of being unspiritual is a lack of self-control. And this is exposed in no greater area than in dating or pre-dating. We do not want to be like this or associate with people like this. This is how false religious Christians act. We did not become Christians to go back to being like the world. Come on. All right? This concept of we need to spend all this time together to be consumed with each other is not godly. Even in Luke 14:25, we do this at disciples said, large crowds were traveling with Jesus and turned to them and said, if anyone comes to me and does not hate father, mother, wife, children, brothers, sisters, yes, even their own life, such a person can't be my disciple. So we started with him and go, your love for God needs to be so above your love for your family, even your wife, that people go, man, that's just radical. How much more if you have a girlfriend or boyfriend? It's so obvious that you're so much more in love with God than you are consumed with them. Now, what are the areas we need to be self-controlled in? Emotions. Keep to set times. Okay? Finish dates on time. All right? So we go through with dating couples set times. I think we normally talk to people about when they're going to get together, when they're going to speak, and I'll talk about that in a second. But I remember one brother is no longer dating this sister. He would get back, and maybe they'd have a little bit of an argument at like 11 o'clock, and they would sit outside the house until it was resolved till 2 o'clock in the morning. And the sisters were like, what the heck is he doing? But he goes, I need to leave when I feel resolved. And actually the issue was he was trying to make her believe and he was upsetting her more. And then 2 o'clock, they're still out there. But it wasn't a wonder that she finished with him in the end. She went, I don't want to be bullied till 2 o'clock in the morning. I don't want to be with somebody that just isn't emotionally capable of withdrawing his emotions. He should have finished, dropped me off, and then gone and spoken to a brother and got some discipling. And of course the other sisters was like, this is a terrible relationship. So it didn't inspire them. I think time. Let's talk to dating couples. This was a rule I gave for Kerry and myself, which I think was very helpful. If there were 4 dates in a month, okay, I would do this. I'd go on one single date with Kerry a month, and I really look forward to this, okay? Then the other 3, I'd go, okay, I want to go on a date with some of our best friends. Then I go on a date with another couple that we really had to give to. You know, maybe somebody that had low social skills or had some issues like that. And then ideally we'd go on dates with non-Christians. Why? Well, when you're married, what is your life going to be about? It's going to be about hanging out with friends, giving to weaker people, and hanging out with non-Christians. All right? So you're really demonstrating, is this a girlfriend or a boyfriend that I can live the rest of my life with? Okay? Plan ahead, no last minute dates. If your date, whether you're dating or not, doesn't know what you're doing today for next Saturday, it's too late. Okay? That's one thing that is love, that they know what's happening. Not the day before, hey sis, put your gum boots on and this, and you're thinking, plan well. If you need extra time, do it by being spiritual, evangelizing, Bible studies. I think about how close we get as human beings by doing the ministry together. Okay, there's nothing closer than doing the ministry together with somebody. Singles, same principle. Do not just go on dates with people that you like. All right. Believe me, God is watching. Yeah. All right, and actually, so are the brothers and sisters. Yeah. So you have a brother that always keeps taping, weaker people on dates. You go, that's who I want to date. You know what? You haven't even been on a date with me. Yeah, but people notice. People know. Finances. As a rule, never spend more on a date than you do on your weekly contribution. Some of us give $30 contribution and $200 on Saturday night. You just got to ask yourself. All right? We don't believe in tithing, but we believe in generosity, particularly towards God. Obviously, take into special account birthdays and, you know what I mean? But this is where advice really, really helps. Okay? Point 3, absolute purity. Absolute purity is the standard. 1 Timothy 5:1. Do not rebuke an older man harshly, but exhort him as they were your father. Treat younger men as brothers, older women as mothers, and younger women as sisters with absolute purity. So the fact that there's absolute purity means that that's different from purity. Okay? So we were talking to young prophets yesterday. We said, what's the difference between a dead person lying there with no breath in them and somebody you go, they're absolutely dead? Somebody said, well, it would be if his head was cut off, another side of the room. You look at that and go, that guy is absolutely dead. His head is over there. So what is the difference between purity and absolute purity? And somebody gave this example and said, well, Jordan was saying, like, if I'm in a room with my physical sister, JT, that'll be pure with brother and sisters, but somebody from outside, a non-Christian, wouldn't know that we're brother and sister. So even in that circumstance, I wouldn't be in the same room alone with my physical sister, because that's absolute purity. Wow. That's the difference. That's the standard. It means being free from imperfection, complete, perfect, and free of accusation. What then would complete purity or perfect purity mean for us towards each other? Galatians 5:22, but the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, self-control. Against such things there is no law. Okay, well, let's do the opposite to this, right? So you're not being pure, and we're not just talking about sexual purity. Okay, so unspiritual purity would be, instead of love, it would be being unloving. Instead of joy, you would be being moody. Instead of being peaceful and patient, you'd be angsty. Okay, you'd be rude, not kind. All right, the date just wasn't good. In the situation, well, unless I make it happen, God won't make it happen. All right, you're sharp with each other and you lose self-control. There are dates happening like that, right? Talk through things like touching, heads on laps, etc. All right, we are never to be in a room alone. We're not with the opposite sex. One of the big cases against one of the big, false churches here is two ushers that were left in their church, a man and a woman, and they were left to stack up the chairs. Okay, and the man raped the woman at church, after church, putting the chairs away. So you go, that would never. You have to understand. That's how men's heart works. Sometimes that's how women's hearts work. And that's how Satan works. Yeah. So don't think, if in the Bible you have Tamar and Amnon, you think it doesn't happen in the kingdom, think again. Ephesians 5:3, but among you there must not even be a hint of sexual immorality or any kind of impurity or of greed, because these are improper for God's holy people. Nor should there be obscenity, foolish talk, or coarse joking, which are out of place, but rather thanksgiving. For of this you can be sure, no immoral, impure, or greedy person, such a person as an idolater, has any inheritance in the kingdom of Christ and of God. Let no one deceive you with empty words. For because of such things, God's wrath comes on those who are disobedient. Therefore, do not be partners with them. Didn't we become Christians not to be like this? Yeah. Do you know what I mean? That like, what's the point of pretending to be a Christian, evangelize, sacrificing, and then not being holy? Where it really counts in so many ways. If your partner or anybody goes over these boundaries, get discipled and be open, splitting up for a period. That would be, you would reset the rules. And we've helped people do this. I remember in the old church in Birmingham, there was a couple the week before they got married. Everything was set. And the marriage was halted. Best decision they ever made. They would end up being too in love with being married. There was all too much stuff being done. And they actually broke off. Parents went nuts. But actually at the end, they both went, thank goodness for that. We just weren't seeing clearly. Then, actually, they got back together and got married. And Brian and Bev Davis, wasn't it? And they're still married today. Why? Because their foundation was put right. Wow. But if there's money and there's this and there's that, makes no difference. Spirituality must be the foundation. The issue is, if they cannot be self-controlled with you before you're married, they won't be self-controlled afterwards. Tell the story when I was in Brisbane. There was this couple we reached out to, and they were going through marriage problems, and non-Christians, and he said, I can't believe it. My husband has gone off with his secretary. And I said, well, how did you meet? He said, well, I was his secretary when he was married to his other wife. So she married a guy, taking him from his wife, thinking that he wouldn't then do it again. So you find out who your partner is pre-dating, dating, and their character stays the same. So if they are, willing to, they've got to change their character, and that may take a couple of years. So I appreciate people come in that are dating in the world. It's like, it's harder for them, but people like Len and Kira, and they'll share afterwards, for them to have rebuilt that relationship from scratch, although they came in, look, they are such powerful shepherds, but they put the effort in to rebuild it, and that was really difficult. Okay, so where does this really come into play? Well, because of Kerry and our purity, and it's not just me, I had a standard, but Kerry, believe me, if I touched her, it wouldn't have gone well for me. Amen. But when I was working in the mines, flying out 7 weeks out of 13, and believe me, prostitutes come at you and your bosses, and everybody's trying to get you to sleep in prostitutes in Australian minefields. Okay, it's a dirty world. She had no fear of me going away. Why? Because if I could be self-controlled with a woman I was absolutely, totally in love with, I'm not going to sleep with a complete and utter stranger. And so through all of that hard time when I was working away, there was no insecurity in our relationship. Never has been. I think whereas other people that have struggled, it's gone badly for them. So some of you may have had to break up through situations. Don't view that as a negative thing. You want to find Mr. Right and Mrs. Right. It's going to affect the rest of your life. So in conclusion, dating should be one of the greatest things in the kingdom. And like all things, if it's done right, then it is amazing. And if it's done wrong, it's horrible. Hebrews 13:7, remember your leaders who spoke the word of God to you. Consider the outcome of the way of life and imitate their faith. I want to appeal to you out of the Kerry's in my life, but also I'm now going to have the shepherds come up, if I can ask them, and I'm going to get Len and Kira and Roz, Jeremy's away, and then Kerry, to actually share things that help them in their relationship, or just share from the lesson. It would be awesome. Amen.
My single life as a Christian was the best. I had a blast. If you want to talk to me about it. It just got better, by the way. It just got better. But I just thought it was the best. I had such a blast. I really, really did. If you want to talk to me about being single and enjoying every minute of it, it was incredible. I had, I think for me, I made an effort to be great friends with the brothers, like to be friends, not to be weird, but to be friends. And I just felt like, in a way it was a little bit selfish because I was in London by myself. And I thought, if anything happened, who would I call? Like at home, I would have called my brother or my dad or some of my friends. And I thought, you know what? I really need to be great friends with the brothers in the church, and I really had some really good friendships with the brothers, and that was where I began as a Christian. Well, when I began as a Christian, some brother asked me as a date, and I said no, because I was like, why? Well, because no one told me what dating was in the kingdom, which was a bit odd, but I learnt. But it was a really great time, and I think, sometimes, and I speak to sisters now, and they're all just waiting for some brother to come and ask them on a date. Sisters, ask the brothers on date. Yeah. Be their friend. Encourage them. I mean, we had a blast as singles, just really encouraging the brothers, and it built great friendships. And I remember for one whole year, I went on a date every single Saturday night, whether someone invited me or I invited someone else, because it was a real priority for me to actually be friends. We're supposed to be brothers and sisters. We're supposed to be each other's best friends and best fans. So that was where I began in my dating relationship, dating, in the church. But then it was like, when you start to date, you think you know what you need, you know what you want. I've been around. I was, 20, I became a Christian when I was about 25, and I was like, yeah, I know what I want and everything else. But that scripture that Joe shared in 2 Corinthians 5 really, really made me just remember, it says we're coming from a worldly point of view. And now that you're a Christian, you're a new creation. We need to think differently. And the first person I dated in the kingdom was with someone I would have dated in the world. And it didn't go well. Because we're different. We have different priorities, different perspectives, and different, just what we want out of our dating relationship should be something different to what we've ever had. And I think that was something I really learned in my first dating relationship. But one thing that I did really, or really helped me was a conversation with my discipler after I finished my first dating relationship. I was like, where do you go from here? It was just, I don't know, it was crazy. But my discipler sat down with me and she said to me, she said, Kerry, there are plenty of brothers out there that like you. Why don't you just go on dates? I was like, yeah, but. And then she said, what about Joe? And I was like, nah. I said, no. He and I, we're just not for each other. It's just not going to work. But then she sat down to me and I said, anyway, I'm going back to Australia, because this was in London. I was like, that's it, I'm done. I'm going back to Australia. And then she said, but Kerry, what if he is the one that God has chosen for you? Oh, wow. And I was like, Okay, I need to take that in and really think about it. But I was actually taken back by that, because I thought, wow, I want more than anything to do God's will for my life, because actually up until this point, it hadn't gone that well, especially in this area, So I was like, I better take her advice and just really open my heart to that, even if it is, and God will show me whether it is his will or not. And it was like, so I did, and she said, make him a cake. And so I was like, all right, I'll make him a cake. So I made him a cake and I took it to his house, and he didn't really like the cake, but that was fine. But it was the whole thing about me just opening my heart to who God wanted for me, not who I wanted for me. And I think that was one of the biggest things that I absolutely learned. Of course, he is the right one, the perfect one. And we were, and I was so grateful for having the humility to listen to the sister who gave me great advice. So sisters, I'm encouraging you to do that, is to be humble, to be open, to really just hearing somebody else, if they're going to give you a spiritual sister, give you good advice in dating. I think the thing I appreciated, and I'll finish here, about my relationship with Joe was just, of course, the purity. I really did respect that a lot, and it really made me secure in our friendship, in our relationship, and also in our marriage at the end of the day. And it did give me such great security, because on our wedding day, Joe gave me 12 white roses for 12 months of purity, because we actually started dating on the 2nd December 1994 and got married on the 2nd of December 1995. So we had 12 months of purity, and I really appreciated that about Joe. He was very hard line on, we're not gonna go down this road. And it gave me such security in our friendship and our relationship, and I think another thing I appreciated the most was just when Joe spent so much time organizing our dates. And they were just really special. And I have cards. I still have all the cards that he wrote me when we were dating, which was really cool. And it was just a really awesome time and a very encouraging time. But of course, I think the thing for me was we both put God first, and God was number one in our life at church. Just every day, where we were always, we were always doing the ministry, because we were in the ministry, but it was really just an amazing time as friends to learn how to work together in God's kingdom, be great friends, because you want a relationship with someone that's going to be your friend first and foremost, and also someone who's going to treat you as a daughter of God. And also, sisters, don't have lists of what you want a brother to be. I've had so many sisters say, I've got this list, and I'm like, guys, put the list away, because that's what you want. What does God want for you? And and a lot of these sisters are in their 30s and not married, and I was like, put those away, sisters, and start to open your heart. And this is the truth. I'm being honest here, sisters. I'm being honest, okay? But because I want this for you, and so many sisters want it, and they're just not open to hearing it. And honestly, I just feel like be open to that, because it's super important that you have who God wants in your life, not who you think is right for you. And just really be open to that, because I say that is my key thing in dating, but also if you're not dating as such, be a great encouragement to the brothers, and be great friends, and a sister they can rely on to be just just an encouragement to them in their life. But few points. Thank you.
Alrighty. Joe, thanks for the lesson, mate. and the privilege to be able to share, dating, engagement, being married, having a young family. I love the topic of dating because it's loads of fun, but at the same time, it's not something that you graduate from, because even when you are engaged and married, your dating actually continues. You still have to have awesome dates to encourage each other and spend quality time remembering, finding cool ways to encourage each other and things like that. So I don't want this idea of dating to be a concept that you do and then you graduate from and you no longer do anymore, if that makes sense. That's something that's really helped us through. Joe also mentioned that we came into the kingdom off the internet, and we were actually dating prior to become members of the church. And I want to sort of shed a different angle on that perspective, because I came into a dating relationship thinking I knew a couple of things, but then I realized quickly, actually, I know nothing. And the reason that's so important is because the best way I try to illustrate is, if I ask you to describe a color that you've never seen, how do you go about that?
True.
You're trying to date in a spiritual way, but you've never done it before, so it's actually impossible. Another way I like to illustrate it is, when you're building a house, there are different grades or different thicknesses of slab or concrete. So if you build a garage, it's got to be so thick, right? If you build a house, it's got to be significantly more thick, with a lot more reinforcement in the concrete to withstand the pressure that's going to sit on that structure. Suddenly, if you're trying to build a house on a slab that's been prepared for a garage, that slab's going to crack, right? And so what I'm trying to demonstrate here is, when life happens, suddenly, leadership is required to, you're required to grow, lead, have children, and all of these are just sort of the trucks that pass along this slab. Suddenly, that truck now just cracks that foundation because it's just not built from it wasn't built correctly. It wasn't built to the appropriate standards, it wasn't built to the appropriate specs, and therefore it just can't really stand the weight that's being imposed on it. And so it becomes a spiritual activity. And unless that slab was built spiritually, it just isn't going to last. And that was something that I had to discover the hard way. And so what I always advise is, it has to be a spiritual exercise. The moment it ceases being a spiritual exercise, you're actually planning to fail. And it's inevitable. So how we managed to sort of transition required a lot of humility. Once again, you're trying to describe a color you've never seen. Where do I start? I think it's this, I think it's that. No, just get lots of advice. And that's what I found to be super helpful. Just be an open book, actually proactively seek the discipling, if that makes sense, as opposed to being sort of chased up. What happens is it gives you the opportunity to ask questions that are more relevant to your circumstances. It enables the much more accurate advice to be sought and gained in that process to ensure success. And so that's also another thing that sort of stood out to me. Now, in terms of practicals, Joe mentioned in the lesson the idea of planning dates ahead of time, planning them 2-3 weeks ahead. Normally, as brothers, sometimes we can sort of try and wing it, but sisters always know. And it's not always going to go well. And so I think what I discovered was actually giving Kira at the time when we were dating enough time to actually prepare. Because you could give me 15 minutes and I'm ready out of the house and I'm gone. I just brush my hair a little, I'm done, right? But I discovered my wife needs a bit more time to prepare. She needs the right footwear, match the dress. I'm thinking, what's going on? But that stuff is really important, right? And if I don't give my my girlfriend at the time, the appropriate information at the time to get ready for that date, it actually can be a discouragement for her because she might feel not prepared. If we're going walking and she's got shoes not suitable for that activity, now she's got blisters the next day, only because I hadn't thought ahead and planned accordingly. Another thing was writing cards after each date. I've got a box of cards. What I do with them, occasionally I'll pull them out and read some things. Whenever we have a little bit of a bump, I'll be like, hey, you wrote this card, remember what you said? And it's awesome. It's really cool. So writing those cards that are really meaningful, actually putting time to them, writing them on both sides. I know Joe sort of makes a thing about them, but when it's like a super encouraging time, that's just a byproduct of it. You write a card and you just can't write enough. And you write on the front, you write on the back, you write on both sides, and it's something that you actually treasure for a lifetime. Another thing is, so my wife has this reputation of being an amazing cook, and that's true. If you've come around to our Bible talk, you know that food is awesome. It's amazing. And I must admit, it's not something that she just woke up with a gift that sort of landed in her lap. But what I realized was, as we were dating, Kira would actually prepare me like meals and stuff for the day and like leave a little note. And I was like, man, this is awesome. Like people at work got jealous, was like, oh man, is that girl still like making you lunch and stuff? And it was just like so cool. So I'd get an awesome lunch and an awesome note, and that'd be like just super encouraging. So a lot of what my wife does now is that's its origins. It wasn't just something that sort of came up out of nowhere. And then finally picking up and drop off at reasonable times to allow my girlfriend at the time to go to bed, wake up, feel encouraged, have a tea time. And then the other thing, was just appreciating the things that my girlfriend appreciates. Because for me, birthdays are like, they're awesome, but I'm like, yeah, all right, But for my wife, for my girlfriend at the time, birthdays are a big deal. And I couldn't just be like, hey, yeah, it's okay, when it's a big deal for my wife or for Kira. And so just making, getting the advice, seeking understanding from her discipler, say, hey, what would really, really encourage her, and just taking on the advice and just doing it. Awesome.
Come on.
Yes. I'm just going to share some practicals that helped us with our dating. The first thing was we laughed a lot together. We would watch clean comedies, or we would, joke around, do things that we enjoyed, but would end in a lot of laughter. We'd play games. Me playing soccer is a joke, so that was fun. Len swimming is also a bit of a joke. So we do that as well. So there were things that we were just like, we were great friends. We'd laugh a lot together. We would pray a lot together. I think because we're so culturally different, and we come from different upbringings as well, praying together really helped me understand my then boyfriend's heart, but helped me understand how to help him in the best way. So whether it was making those little efforts or just uplifting him in my own time in prayer, that was something that I learned how to do from an early time as well. That cooking was really helpful as well to win his heart over. I would drive from my parents' place to his work and then to work, and he drove from Liverpool to work, and we lived probably an hour and a half from each other, and church was nearly 2 hours away. So we would drive around, but it wasn't an effort because we were doing it because we wanted to show each other God's love and how to be serving to each other. And we would take interest in supporting each other's hobbies. So I would go to Len's soccer games. Even as a baby Christian, we'd have, there's a photo of, Marari, Eric, Tegan, Sean, myself, wearing a t-shirt spelling Lenox, and we were like cheering, and we'd meet his teams, and there was one time the whole church came out for one of his grand finals. They won, and it was just really cool. Like little Levi was probably a year and a half old, and holding this big cup up, and so those little things were really cool. Like I really still today have no idea of football and really am trying, but I'll argue with the TV and know nothing. But the fact that I'll sit there with Len and do that, I'm sure much the same as Origin with Kerry. Like you get fired up over something you might not understand, but it's like just go. That really does something to Len. He's like, oh wow, she's really sitting there and going through this whole 90-minute thing with me. We baked cupcakes together for mercy events. We did a fitness ministry together a long time ago. So we did boxing in the community and a whole lot of, back when I was studying my exercise science degree. And we just seek opportunities to serve in ministry together. So obviously now it's in shepherding in Kids Kingdom and other roles, but we did that while we were dating, and that really helped us a lot with understanding our strengths and helping each other in that way. So thank you.
Right, I think everybody will share a lot of amazing example, and so I'm going to share 3 very simple things what God put on my heart. One is, no matter, like a lot of people already talk about, after you become disciples, dating is a brand new thing. And so I constantly hear people will mention to me, either you have a lot of experience in the world and you think dating is very simple for you, is actually sometimes can have opposite effect, because what you know is a worldly thing. But also we'll have a lot of sisters come to tell me they never have experience, so they feel very insecure. And I actually feel like you are a white paper you can learn from brand new from God is actually very good, and so that is one thing. Another is, in the kingdom is a safe environment for you to date. So what does that mean is, in the world is actually have so many, you feel you have to be certain way, especially, I don't know, Chinese people, we have, especially when you reach certain age, you have a lot of expectation when you think about dating. Yeah. So what does that mean is, you think about when you're dating is equal marriage. So a lot of people afraid dating is because they feel if I date you, I need to marry you. Right. And when you have the family together, everybody is asking you, where's your girlfriend? They actually is asking you, where's your future wife? So you're afraid to date is because you feel you're not graduate college yet, you don't have enough saving, or your job just started. You have a lot of tradition. And therefore, a lot of Chinese people is not go steady yet, And that's when I was in ICOs, when I was in the old movement, we have 600 disciples in the church, but very few dating couple. It's because that's a very cultural thing, and we have to break that culture, is really knowing you don't need to have everything, because we are not of the world. We are not looking for those things to secure your dating relationship or secure your marriage. So when I meet Jeremy, be honest, I never think about dating a white guy, a foreigner. And when I first met him, he was a student and I was a teacher. I was a high school teacher, and he went to my university to study Chinese, and he don't have any saving but student loans. And he don't have a job. So when he think about dating and want to talk to my mom and dad, guess what? My mom and dad is not for it, right? And so if I adopt the Chinese culture, the thinking, I would think he's not the one. Because there is so many barriers. There is language barrier, cultural barrier, all the barrier is right there. I don't know what happened, but I think one thing I knew is he loved God. Yeah. We went to mission team together. We have so many prayer. We're not really focused on each other, but God just make it become very, very obvious, And now we're married this year, 22 years. Yeah. So what I want to encourage you is, ask yourself, do you have any tradition in your heart stopping you to really? Is a brother have some tradition? Maybe there is some tradition and make you hesitant, make you you are missing out. Yeah. I'm thinking about if that time I'm shrinking back, I will not stand here, because if not because Jeremy, I won't travel around the world, And so that is something I want to encourage you guys, maybe can break that barrier with just focus on, if they love God, then that's the best inheritance, the best security you can have. Yeah, come on. And another one is, whether you admit it or not, we all bring something, the baggage, into the kingdom, and in the dating relationship as well. And for me, one big thing, and I didn't realize, is my pride. If you knew me 20 something years ago, I'm a very extremely prideful girl. And I think I know everything. And in the world, I'm leading different things. And so coming to the kingdom to treat brother, sisters, but especially brother with respect is, be honest, like outwardly, maybe you won't see it. But inwardly, there is a lot of criticalness. You know, and the funny thing is you think people don't know, but people know, people knew. And so how do you know you are prideful? I think, you know, Joe shared about one thing I think is awesome. Sister is looking for brother to lead them, and brother is looking for sister to help them. Yeah. But what is the heart of helper is humility. Right? Is thinking about how to make other people better. Yeah. And I remember way back then when I was in campus ministry, the brothers actually have a hard time with me. They have a hard time when they see I need to change. Nobody is actually there to talk to me because they know I won't listen. So end up is they go to talk to the church leader. So in one leaders meeting, yeah, no joking, this is pretty, yeah, so church leader actually discipled me in front of all the brothers. Wow. Yeah, I was, wow, that says a lot. And brother cheers in the back. You know, and how do you know you are not humble? I feel like, do you give brother compliment? When they see something good, do you encourage them? Do you quickly to point out their effort to show appreciation? You know, or do you delay to when the brother requests you, hey, can you help me? You delayed. Your attitude is, it's very inconvenience. You know, so although you don't say something, but you say a lot by your attitude. Yeah. You know, and I'm just thinking about, be honest as a sister, what is the most attractive thing is actually our attitude. When we humble, it's actually very attractive. Yeah. But when we prideful, it actually shows, you try to tell brothers, I'm really hard to lead. Therefore, you won't be my leader. Then, therefore, you won't date because in the dating relationship, you are preparing the brother to be your future leader. Yeah. Right? And so that's just three simple things is what I learned through my life. And now if you see, like, you know, one side note, why do I know Jeremy is my future husband, is he's one of the brother not afraid to disciple me. You know? Yeah, but throughout now, like, I change a lot, hopefully, you know, and now I'm telling all the women one thing like I'm looking for or helping their dating is a heart of humility. Yeah. And hopefully these three things can encourage you guys.